The drug war and its subsequent ending has been a big part of really a lot of the work that I've done over the last few years. And though I cannot claim any credit for what's taken place here, I gotta say, this is huge news. It's coming to us from Forbes. Congress votes to block feds from enforcing marijuana laws in legal states by Tom Engel. Angle? I'm not sure. But, when I hear a lot of these internet revolutionaries and people who are out there talking about reparations and whatnot, things at a policy and at a legislative level need to change. It's not just writing a check or making more programs or anything else like that. If we really want to change the fortunes for our communities and for our families, these changes need to take place at a policy level, and this is a fantastic step in the right direction. Let's read. The House of Representatives approved a far-reaching measure on Thursday to prevent the Department of Justice from interfering with state marijuana laws, including those allowing recreational use, cultivation, and sales. The amendment, which also shields cannabis laws in Washington, D.C. and U.S. territories, is now attached to a large-scale appropriations bill to fund parts of the federal government for fiscal year 2020. So, in case you're not aware, the way a lot of laws and legislation work is that they don't get passed on their own. They have to be attached to something that's already on its way, and the waters get muddied a lot. Big part of the reason Jon Stewart was on Capitol Hill, because that's one of the things that happened with the funding for 911 first responders, is that it got attached to another bill, and it has to get renewed every year or every 5 years. I'm not sure, but let's keep going. The inclusion of adult use programs represents a significant expansion of an existing policy that protects only local medical cannabis laws from federal intervention, which was first enacted in 2014 and has since been extended through annual spending bills. The broader rider was approved in a floor vote of 267 to 165, a tally that is considered by legalization supporters to be an indication of how much support there is in Congress for more comprehensive and permanent changes to federal marijuana policies. Now, one of the reasons this is so big, and one of the reasons I'm really interested in this, is because I was in California when Obama was doing raids on pot shops, dispensaries, and smoke shops. One of my favorite smoke shops at the time had gotten raided. And so, this is a really big change. This is the most significant vote on marijuana reform policy that the House of Representatives has ever taken, said Normal Political Director Justin Streckel. Today's action by Congress highlights the growing power of the marijuana law reform movement and the increasing awareness by political leaders that the policy of prohibition and criminalization has failed. Cannabis Trade Federation CEO Neil Levin agreed with the importance of the legislative victory. The historic nature of this vote cannot be overstated, he said. For the first time, a chamber of Congress has declared that the federal government should defer to state cannabis laws. Aaron Smith, executive director of the National Cannabis Industry Association, called the vote without a doubt the biggest victory for federal cannabis policy reform to date, and a hopeful sign that the harmful policies of marijuana prohibition will soon be a relic of the past. And that's really where, I'm just beyond all this. I don't mean to say that in an arrogant way. I just genuinely feel as if the entire drug war has to come to an end. The prohibition and the prison system and prison farming, it really relies on these laws. And it's been a big part of the reason why urban communities can't seem to get forward. You take out decent and good work and you replace it with an economy. I've never been the type of person to be dumb enough to believe that, the illicit market isn't a huge part of the urban economy. And whereas I know it'll never fully go away, with the dismissal and the dissolution of the drug war, it will really take gigantic steps forward in a positive direction, as well as, but that's the thing. You can't just take out the drug war because you're taking out a huge part of the economy. It needs to be replaced with industry and other means in which for families to provide for themselves and each other. The measure, sponsored by Reps from Oregon, Eleanor Holmes Norton, and Tom McClintock, would bar the Department of Justice from spending money to prevent states and territories from implementing their own laws that authorize the use, distribution, possession, or cultivation of marijuana. In 2015, a nearby identical measure came just 9 flipped votes short of passage on the House floor. Since then, the number of states with full legalization laws has more than doubled, meaning that far more lawmakers now represent constituents who stand to benefit from its protections. The end of marijuana prohibition has never been closer. When Drug Policy Alliance and small band of allies first worked on this amendment in 2015, we were told that we didn't stand a chance, DPA Director of National Affairs Michael Collins said. But we convinced members this was the right thing to do, and 4 years on, victory is sweet. Now is the time for Democrats to pivot to passing legislation that will end prohibition through a racial justice lens, making sure that the communities most impacted by our racist marijuana laws have a stake in the future of legalization, he said. To do anything, seriously, Amazon, stop. To do anything less would be to repeat an injustice. If you're unfamiliar, I really did press this in the beginning. I was just in the forefront a couple years back when social equity and urban equity really started taking hold. One of the main guys behind Jamal Holly getting to his place on it, and then it just working its way around as a quote unquote racial justice issue. And I gotta say, I'm sick of the argument at this point. Let's just be legit about this and say, hey, look, if you bring the industries here, just bring the industry here. That's it. Create the jobs and let the people work. That's it. As far as, and guess what? The people of these municipalities, of these communities, let those people work. Black, brown, green, blue, purple, it doesn't matter. Okay? At this point, just back away from the racial justice part when it comes to legalization, because it really, particularly here in Jersey, it was a huge hindrance. On Wednesday, House approved a similar amendment protecting the marijuana laws of Indiana tribes by a voice vote, and no member requested a roll call vote, so that language is also now attached to the spending bill. We're watching the growth of this industry, a multi-billion-dollar industry. We're watching state after state move forward, Blumenauer said in a floor debate on the State Protection Amendment on Wednesday evening. Every one of us on the floor of the House who are here now represent areas that have taken action. We have had embedded in our legislative protections for medical marijuana, and this would simply extend that same protections to prevent the Department of Justice interfering with adult use. I strongly urge that we build on the legacy that we've had in the past, that we move this forward to allow the federal government to start catching up to where the rest of the states are. Tonight, my amendment with Rep. Blumenauer to prohibit the DoJ from using its funds to prevent jurisdictions from implementing their own medical and recreational marijuana laws passed in the House. Thank you to Rep. Blumenauer for working with me to include this, and that's Holmes Norton. In a letter circulated to colleagues prior to the vote, McClintock wrote that the issue at hand is whether the federal government has the constitutional authority to dictate policy to states on an issue which occurs strictly within their own borders. I do not believe the federal government has the authority, but even if it did, states should determine their own criminal justice policies, he wrote. This is how our constitutional system was designed to function. God bless you, brother, because I couldn't agree more. That's really one of the main things that keeps our country running, is that the states are given a certain level of anonymity. I do not believe the federal government Okay. Don Murphy, Director of Federal Policies for the Marijuana Policy Project, said that Blumenauer and McClintock deserve credit for their early leadership on marijuana policy reform, which dates back to the days when it was just good policy, not good politics too. The fate of the cannabis measures in the Senate is unknown for now. Historically, the Chamber's Appropriations Committee has been relatively open to attaching marijuana riders to spending bills and has consistently approved the medical cannabis protections, but the body's Republican leadership may be reluctant to take the further step of also tying the Justice Department's hands when it comes to enforcing federal prohibition against licensed businesses and consumers in states that allow recreational marijuana use and sales. The House just made history. I'm so proud to have voted with my colleagues to pass an amendment to prevent the DoJ from interfering with state cannabis programs. This progress is outstanding news for Nevada and so many states across the country. Dina Titus. House Democratic leadership urged their conference to support the measure in a whip email on Thursday, and only 8 members of the party voted against it. While a majority of Republicans voted against the rider, 41 GOP members supported it. The passage of the State Protection Amendment comes despite congressional offices receiving an 11th hour email saying Greenwich Biosciences, maker of the Food and Drug Administration approved CBD-based medication Epidiolex, wanted lawmakers to defeat it. The message to congressional staff claimed that the measure is overly broad and could be interpreted as impacting the ability of the DOJ to assist the FDA with any enforcement action that they may need to be taken to ensure the public safety. And you're just telling me, oh, Greenwich Biosciences, yeah, you're against it? Oh, no, I'm all for it, right? That's really like the people like these types of companies like Greenwich Biosciences. They're the ones that, probably been plotting on this for about the past 15 years at least, And so they've gotten their little groove going, and they actually, I think, would prefer having the DOJ as an arm to knock out competition and to tighten up the reins, keep the reins very, very tight. Because eventually, once we get to ending the drug war in its whole, a lot of pharmaceutical companies, particularly when it comes to cannabis and marijuana, they're kind of gonna be SOL, because with home grow and just with a flooded market, they're definitely looking after their own bottom line. But Collins of DPA pointed out that, if that were true, it will also apply to the current medical cannabis rider that's been part of federal law for nearly 5 years. It doesn't pass the laugh test, he said. Who are Dems going to side with, Big Pharma or people trying to end the drug war? Big Pharma. I mean, seriously, dude, what are you talking about? It's Big Pharma, they got the money. A company media representative didn't respond to a phone message seeking comment. Earlier on Thursday, the House approved an amendment from Rep. Jerry Neer that directs the Food and Drug Administration to establish a process for regulating CBD in foods and dairy supplements. Another measure passed in a voice vote from Rep. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez that shifts $5 million away from the Drug Enforcement Administration towards an opioid treatment program. Oh my goodness, she really is a Democrat, isn't she? An Ocasio-Cortez amendment aimed at removing barriers to research on psychedelic drugs such as MDMA was soundly defeated in the House floor last week. The House is set to consider another amendment on the spending legislation in the coming days that would allow military veterans to receive medical marijuana recommendations from Department of Veteran Affairs doctors. A separate spending bill moving through the House already contains language to protect banks from being punished for working with state legal cannabis businesses, and removes a long-standing rider that has prevented Washington, D.C. from spending its own local tax dollars to legalize and regulate marijuana sales. Meanwhile, standalone cannabis legislation is also advancing. A comprehensive marijuana banking bill was cleared by the Financial Services Committee in March and is expected to receive a floor vote next month. The Veterans Affairs Committee held a hearing on 4 separate pieces of legislation concerning cannabis and military veterans on Thursday, and the Small Business Committee hosted a Wednesday hearing on issues facing cannabis firms, with the panel's chairwoman announcing she would soon file a bill on the issue. And that's it from Tom Angle. 15-year veteran of cannabis law reform movement, and I know where to look to spot the most interesting legalization developments. All right, okay, buddy, take it easy. So, ultimately, this is really good and amazing news, okay? As someone who's witnessed the feds go after, cannabis growers and, paraphernalia, shops and businesses. This is good. This is an expansion of liberty, an expansion of freedom to an extent. But as you can tell, even in the article in and of itself, there are still people looking to, lock that up. So with that being said, I think I've gone on long enough. All the internet stuff. Like it if you liked it or dislike it. I ain't scared. Sub. Because, fantastic voice. Share, because sharing is caring. And speak. Let me know, what do you think? Are you for legalization, against legalization? If you're on this channel, I'm pretty sure you're for. But it's not just cannabis legalization. It's about ending the entire drug war, I mean, that's the killer right there, because that's what's really ripped our families apart. That's what really just had its way, particularly through urban and descendant America. So, until the next one.